Part 7 of The Watsons by Jane Austen. Among these was Mr. Howard, his sister leaning on his arm, and no sooner were they within reach of Emma than Mrs. Blake, calling her notice by a friendly touch, said, "Your goodness to Charles, my dear Miss Watson, brings all his family upon you. Give me leave to introduce my brother, Mr. Howard." Emma curtsied. The gentleman bowed, made a hasty request for the honour of her hand in the next two dances, to which as hasty an affirmative was given, and they were immediately impelled in opposite directions. Emma was very well pleased with the circumstances. There was a quietly cheerful, gentlemanlike air in Mr. Howard which suited her, and in a few minutes afterwards the value of her engagement increased when, as she was sitting in the card-room, somewhat screened by a door, she heard Lord Osborne, who was lounging on a vacant table near her, call Tom Musgrove towards him and say, "Why do you not dance with that beautiful Emma Watson? I want you to dance with her, and I will come and stand by you." "I was determining on it this very moment, my lord. I'll be introduced and dance with her directly." "I do, and if you find she does not want much talking to, you may introduce me by and by." "Very well, my lord. If she is like her sister, she will only want to be listened to. I will go this moment. I shall find her in the tea-room. That stiff old Mrs. Edwards has never done tea." Away he went, Lord Osborne after him, and Emma lost no time in hurrying from her corner exactly the other way, forgetting in her haste that she left Mrs. Edwards behind. "We had quite lost you," said Mrs. Edwards, who followed her with Mary in less than 5 minutes. "If you prefer this room to the other, there is no reason why you should not be here, but we had better all be together." Emma was saved the trouble of apologising by their being joined at that moment by Tom Musgrave, who, requesting Mrs. Edwards aloud to do him the honour of presenting him to Miss Emma Watson, left that good lady without any choice in the business, but that of testifying by the coldness of her manner that she did it in unwillingly. The honour of dancing with her was solicited without loss of time, and Emma, however she might like to be thought a beautiful girl by lord and commoner, was so little disposed to favour Tom Musgrave himself that she had considerable satisfaction in avowing her prior engagement. He was evidently surprised and discomposed. The style of her last partner had probably led him to believe her not overpowered with applications. "My little friend Charles Blake," he cried, "must not expect to engross you the whole evening. We can never suffer this. It is against the rules of the assembly, and I am sure it will never be patronised by our good friend here, Mrs. Edwards. She is by much too nice a judge of decorum to give her licence to such a dangerous particularity." "I am not going to dance with Master Blake, sir." The gentleman, a little disconcerted, could only hope he might be more fortunate another time, and seemed unwilling to leave her, though his friend Lord Osborne was waiting in the doorway for the result. As Emma, with some amusement, perceived, he began to make civil inquiries after her family. "How comes it that we have not the pleasure of seeing your sisters here this evening? Our assemblies have been used to be so well treated by them that we do not know how to make this neglect." "My eldest sister is the only one at home, and she could not leave my father." "Miss Watson, the only one at home? You astonish me. It seems but the day before yesterday that I saw them all three in this town. But I am afraid I have been a very sad neighbour of late. I hear dreadful complaints of my negligence wherever I go, and I confess it is a shameful length of time since I was at Stanton. But I shall now endeavour to make myself amends for the past." Emma's calm curtsy in reply must have struck him as very unlike the encouraging warmth he had been used to receive from her sisters, and gave him probably the novel sensation of doubting his own influence and of wishing for more attention than she bestowed. The dancing now recommenced. Miss Carr, being impatient to call, everybody was required to stand up, and Tom Musgrave's curiosity was appeased on seeing Mr. Howard come forward and claim Emma's hand. "That will do as well for me," was Lord Osborne's remark when his friend carried him the news, and he was continually at Howard's elbow during the 2 dances. The frequency of his appearance there was the only unpleasant part of her engagement, the only objection she could make to Mr. Howard. In himself, she thought him as agreeable as he looked. Though chatting on the commonest topics, he had a sensible, unaffected way of expressing himself which made them all worth hearing, and she only regretted that she had not been able to make his pupil's manners as unexceptionable as his own. The 2 dances seemed very short, and she had her partner's authority for considering them so. At their conclusion, the Osbornes and their train were all on the move. "We are off at last," said his lordship to Tom. "How much longer do you stay in this heavenly place? Till sunrise?" "No, faith, my lord, I have had quite enough of it, I assure you. I shall not show myself here again when I have had the honour of attending Lady Osborne to her carriage. I shall retreat in as much secrecy as possible to the most remote corner of the house, where I shall order a barrel of oysters and be famously snug. Let us see you soon at the castle, and bring me word how she looks by daylight." Emma and Mrs. Blake parted as old acquaintances, and Charles shook her by the hand and wished her good-bye at least a dozen times. From Miss Osborne and Miss Carr she received something like a jerkin curtsy as they passed her. Even Lady Osborne gave her a look of complacency, and his lordship actually came back after the others were out of the room to beg her pardon and look in the window seat behind her for the gloves which were visibly compressed in his hand. As Tom Musgrave was seen no more, we may suppose his plan to have succeeded, and imagine him mortifying with his barrel of oysters in dreary solitude, or gladly assisting the landlady in her bar to make fresh negus for the happy dancers above. Emma could not help missing the party, by whom she had been, though in some respects unpleasantly distinguished, and the 2 dances which followed and concluded the ball were rather flat in comparison with the others. Mr. Edwards having played with good luck, they were some of the last in the room. End of part 7.